All right, everyone. Welcome to me teaching you how to drive a manual transmission car. So before we start, I just want to go over some of the mechanics of the car that you're going to be using as you drive, and that's the clutch. So if you can see this graphic, as you push down on the clutch pedal, it's going to separate these two plates. These two plates are spinning in the same direction. One's from the engine and one drives the transmission. And as you lift up on the clutch pedal, they're going to come back together, and that's what moves the car. So down here is a small diagram of what pressing on the clutch looks like. So at the top, there's no play. But then once you get into the friction zone, which is when the springs from these plates begin to pull apart or come back together, there's increasingly less pressure as you go down. So at the bottom, they're barely touching and they're just scraping against each other. And then from the end of that to the floor, there's no play, meaning they're completely separated. So as you're coming back up, you want to go slowly through the friction zone so the engine side can catch the gearbox side up to speed. And then once they're fully engaged, your car will be moving like any other car. So first, let's start the vehicle. It's a little bit different from starting automatic because you have to do things yourself. So first, when you get in the car, you're going to put your foot down on the clutch and your other foot on the brake, and you can pull the car into neutral, and you can press the engine start button. After that, you can remove your foot from the clutch since the car is in neutral, and you can remove the parking brake. When you're in a manual transmission car, you should always be using the parking brake since there's no park setting. So when you first learn to drive a manual, the first thing you want to do is master using the clutch. So to do that, you should find a fairly empty parking lot, although it's a Saturday and this parking lot is not very empty. But if you're just learning, I'd find something a little emptier. So what you're going to do to practice is you're going to put your foot all the way down in the clutch so you can shift. You're going to put the car in first gear. Once the car is in first gear, you can remove your foot from the brake and the car will now be able to freely roll. So if you're on a hill, it might roll backwards or forward. Then you're going to slowly release the pressure from the clutch until you feel the car begin to move. And you're going to go slowly, 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 and the car's going to begin to move. And then once the car's fully moving, you can remove your foot from the clutch and you can press the gas pedal to move. So you're going to do that over and over again until you get it down. So again, stop, and then we're moving, we're moving, we're moving. And that whole time, I never gave the car any gas. I just used the clutch to move, right? So let's do it again. Moving, moving, moving. And my foot is fully off the clutch. Now this is important because when you're in traffic, you don't want to stall the car. So I'll try to show you what stalling the car looks like. If you remove your foot too fast from the clutch, there you go, we stalled the car. So when that happens, you just gotta put your foot back on the clutch and your foot on the brake, and this car automatically starts it back up. But other cars, you may have to shift into neutral and fully restart. So after we learn how to use the clutch, we're gonna learn how to shift. So when you're driving around in first gear, if you want to shift, make sure you avoid pedestrians. You're gonna put your foot on the clutch all the way down, and now the car's kind of in neutral, and you can pull the car into second gear. And then again, slowly release the clutch just like you were doing in first, and the car will begin to move, but this time in second gear. Now as you speed up, you're gonna need to go up the gears, right? So we'll start in first again, come into a stop, look both ways. We're in first gear, foot on the clutch, into second gear. Here's a stop sign. When you're coming to a stop at this speed, you can put the car straight into neutral. Although when you're on the highway or coming to a stop from a higher speed, you should be shifting down the gears rather than just going to neutral. Complete stop, look both ways. I'm going to begin to leave the park. First gear, 10 miles an hour. That's a good time to shift into second. Now we're in second gear. When you want to go into third, it's going to be from the bottom left up to the top middle. So we're going to put the clutch all the way in and then go up to third gear. And then again, release the clutch slowly. Now when you want to downshift, if you're trying to come to a stop, you're just going to do everything backwards. So instead of going from third to fourth or third to any other gear, you're gonna go third to second. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna put the clutch in, pull the car into neutral, and then second gear, and then slowly release the clutch. Now this car has a feature called rev matching, which basically the two plates I showed you in the beginning, it will sync their speeds up. So when you release the clutch, it's a lot smoother. Now you can do this manually if your car does not have that feature, but this car does have that feature, so it does it for me. I'll go back into third since we're leaving the park, and we'll pull onto the highway, and I'll show you the rest of the gears. So again, we're coming to a stop here. We have to move onto a faster road. So we're gonna go into second, slowly release the clutch. I didn't use the brakes yet. Now we're gonna start braking. And then now I'm gonna put it into neutral since I'm coming to a very, very slow stop. Looks clear on the left. First gear, slowly release, but this time I'm gonna give it a little bit of gas to get it going faster. And now we're on the main road. And then as you're shifting through the gears, when you're coming off the clutch, especially at the top of the friction zone, you can begin to give the car a little bit of gas, because if you don't do that, you're gonna be shifting very, very slowly, and people behind you might honk because you're going way too slow. Now I did get into fifth gear on this stretch. I'm going almost 50 miles an hour. So as you go faster and faster, you want to increase your gears or shift into the next gear. And then once you get into sixth gear, that's the last one. And this is kind of your overdrive gear, which is where you're kind of doing your highway cruising speeds and you're not trying to pass anyone. So here it looks like a red light's going to come up. So I'm going to shift from sixth straight into fourth gear. It might be a green light, but cars might be still slowing down. And it's going to be a red light, so I'm going to shift into third. And I'm going to shift into second. And I'm going to start braking. Now you can begin to brake whenever you'd like. But when you get a manual transmission car, one of the advantages is engine braking, which is as you downshift, the engine resists the car's movement more and more. So it kind of brakes for you without using your brakes. So when you have a manual transmission car, it's nice to do because you can preserve some of the wear on your brake pads and you can extend the life of them. When you're driving manual, you should be paying attention to, of course, your speed, but also the tachometer, which is your revolutions per minute in the engine. Because as you see, your first gear, I'm already at 4,000 revolutions per second, or per minute, sorry. And as I go up the gears, it kind of gets slower and slower. I'm going faster and faster, but the same RPMs. So now we're in fourth gear, we're at 3,000 RPMs. And if I press down on the gas a lot, you can feel kind of the car really wants to accelerate. And then we'll go into fifth, a little bit less, the car has less acceleration. And then sixth, the car has the least amount of acceleration. So that's it, guys. I hope you learned something new today. Not many people know how to drive a manual transmission nowadays, but it is really important, especially if you maybe want to travel to Europe. In Europe, they do have a lot of manual transmission cars still, as opposed to America. And I believe renting a manual transmission car in Europe, if you are a visitor, is a little cheaper. So that's probably your #1 advantage, although it's very random.